Hey everyone, it's Luis Concepcion from Strategic Profit Line Trading coming to you with the plan of the week for week number 5. Here's our disclosures. As always, this is content is for educational purposes only. I'm not giving any investment advice. This is not tailored to any one individual. Past performance does not guarantee future results, and all investments involve risk. Here's our agenda. I'll cover the news. I'll provide a market overview of the indices, and we have a conglomerate 570 companies reporting earnings. So we can see a lot of movement this week. Here's our results for week number 4. Provided 31 zones, went 3-1 in options. No entry were 28. We got one in progress, and that's Lockheed Martin if you didn't get out of your verticals. And just a reminder that just because these zones did not hit in this week, they are still valid for the oncoming week. So you can go back and look at those zones. Here's what we're looking at on the earnings release. Like I said, a lot of companies, a lot of opportunities this week. I'll do my best to provide you with the zones that I believe that may or may not hit, and give you an analysis of the charts. Here's where we're at on the year. Pretty much the trades I worked out this week with Lockheed Martin and Logitech, and then UPS penetrated through the zone. But if you would have took that trade in options, you wouldn't have got stopped out, and it could have been a profitable trade. However, because the zone was violated, I annotated it as a loss. Transitioning into our news, starting with Monday, as you can see, 30 minutes after the open, we're gonna have a PMI report, so they can this could be some volatility 30 minutes into the open, but because we have so many companies reporting earnings, it might not be such as a big factor. Moving on to Tuesday, 7 o'clock, we got the JOLTS report. So 30 minutes after the open, again, expect some volatility. For those of you trading futures and forex, the New Zealand dollar pretty much at the end of the day has a report, their unemployment rate. So be mindful of that if you're trading the New Zealand dollar, the dollar. And then on Wednesday, you can see we got non-farm exchange payroll. That's going to be pre-market. So we may have some volatility at the open, depending on how that report is released. And then 30 minutes after the open, we have another PMI report this week. Then moving on to Thursday, we got the British pound pre-market. So those of you trading, again, futures and formers, be mindful if you're trading the British pound in the wee hours of the night. We have unemployment claims pre-market on Thursday, so that can cause some volatility at the open of the market. And then on Friday, we have the Canadian dollar and the US dollar releasing several reports, so that can cause some volatility. And that's going to do it for us this week with the news. Transitioning into our chart, starting with the SPX, as you can see, the SPX made an all new time high and it rejected it. And then it attempted to make an all new time high again this week and it failed to do so. And I have no supply for you in the S&P 500. Our demand zone stays as is, 571.71. 57.71 to 56.92 on the demand side. No supply in the S&P 500. Moving on to the NASDAQ. Our NASDAQ level held. There we go. The 21,913 to 2206 has held once again. This is the second time this level has held. So the NASDAQ is showing a little bit more weakness than the S&P 500. And our demand zone is going to remain the same. 2540 to 2383 this week. Moving on to the Dow Jones. For the Dow Jones, as you can see, the Dow Jones are level work this week. Now that this zone has been pretty much exceeded all the way to the top, I'm going to remove it and say that we no longer have supply in the Dow Jones until something forms. On the demand side, still looking at the 417.45 to 414.21. The Dow Jones being a little bit stronger than the NASDAQ at the moment. And I just saw this. We are going to use the 433 to 430 on the demand side in the Dow Jones. Moving on to the RUT. The RUT, as you can see, still doing nothing. And that's all I can really say about the RUT. Our levels have not changed pretty much all month. We still have this supply level at 2333 to 2370, and on the demand side, 2018 to 1956. Now, moving into earnings. Let me change this to the right week. We are in week 5. Sorry about that. Starting with SAIA. This is a trucking company for those of you who are not aware. And that demand zone is going to be 299.25 to 242.82. I have no supply for you. All-time highs were 628 earlier last year. So no supply, but the demand zone is going to be 299.25 to 242.88, and it reports on Monday morning. Moving on to Tyson Foods. On the demand side, 50, let's just call it 50 even to 49.25, and on the supply side, 74 even to 76.35. Next is going to be Twist. On the supply side, 54.22 to 60.97, and on the demand side, 25.79 to 23.04. Next, Palantir. Palantir has been explosive this entire year. Just made an all-new time high of 85.22. First demand zone I have for you is 69.43 to 67.14. In the event of an overshoot, we got a 56.48 to 53.43. And that's going to do it for Palantir. Next, Kyndryl. No supply in Kyndryl for you. First demand zone I have for you is 28.73 to 27.09. Next I have for you is Clorox. On the supply side for Clorox, we got 180.28 to 187.05, and on the demand side, 144.26 to 140.85. Next, we got PayPal. So for PayPal, on the supply side, 100 to, let's just call it 100 even to 106.03, and on the demand side, 79.11 to 76.43. Moving on to Pepsi. This will be Tuesday morning. So Pepsi just came out a demand zone. It's going to be 147.23 to 127.92. And on the supply side, 183.41 to 187.51. Next company I have for you is Pfizer. On the demand side, 24.45 to 23.36. And the supply zone is at 33.54 to 34.67. Next company I got for you is Merck. So on Merck, on the demand side, 89.22 to 84.35, and on the supply side, 125.42 to 129.94. Next company, Ferrari. So Ferrari on the demand side, 392.61 to 368.98, and on the supply side, 473.18 to 484.68. Next company I have for you is AMD. On the demand side, 99.37 to 80.81. And on the supply side, 174.70 to 187.43. Next company, Chipotle. So for Chipotle, 46.95 to 45.46 on the demand side, 68.34 to 69.37 on the supply side. Next I got for you is EA. On the demand side, 113.16 to 108.43, and on the supply side, 139.69 to 144.16. Next is Prudential. So for Prudential, on the supply side, 125.93 to 127.81, and on the demand side, 107.08 to 104.41. Next is Uber. For Uber, on the demand side, 40.39 to 37.20, and on the supply side, 77.41 to 81.34. Next is Disney. So for Disney, on the demand side, 97.41 to 91.48, and on the supply side, 116.60 to 120.14. Next is Novo. So for Novo, we got 58.11 to 45.70, and 142.82 to 146.51. Next is Toyota. And for Toyota, on the demand side, 148.77 to 129.61. And on the supply side, 222.28 to 237.17. Next is Qualcomm. So for Qualcomm, we got 143.84 to 139.05. And on the supply side, 186.25 to 196.58. Next is Ford. So for Ford, 860 to 736 on the demand side, 1357 to 1419 on the supply side. Next company I got for you is ARM. So for ARM on the supply side, 180.31 to 188.56, and on the demand side, 79.43 to 69.10. Next company, SYM. On the supply side, 37.46 to 41.68, and on the demand side, 18.74 to 17.11. Next company, Viking, on the demand side, 24.65 to 19.63, and on the supply side, 62.83 to 70.54. Then we got Lilly. So for Lilly, on the demand side, 7.11 to 6.85.83, and on the supply side, 9.42.43 to 9.74.25. Next is Roblox. There's no supply in Roblox. First demand zone I have for you is 60 even to 55.84. In the event of an overshoot, you got the 53.01 to 47.91. Next is Tapestry. No supply in Tapestry. First demand zone I have for you is 58.11 to 54.65. Same scenario here. In the event of an overshoot, you have a demand zone at 50.99 to 46.84. Next, we got Philip Morris. So for Philip Morris, on the demand side, 124.08 to 122.31. No supply as it just hit an all-time high last November of 134. And we got ConocoPhillips. So for ConocoPhillips, on the supply side, 127.80 to 130.92. On the demand side, 70.57 to 60.77. And lastly for you, I have this week is TTWO. On the supply side, 218 to 215.73, and on the demand side, 139.64, 130.16. That's going to do it for the charts this week. Again, for anybody who has questions, check out the website. Check out my blog. For those of you who are not following me on social media, feel free to do so for updates on trades. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to send me an email. Until next week, until next time, happy trading.